Alright, I've talked about FNAF quite a bit on this channel, more than any other game in fact, most of which being discussions about this brand new game security breach. And with its many controversies and other interesting things, it's a lot of fun to talk about. However, as this game ages by about a few weeks, people are already wondering what is next for the series in the future. And right now seems like a better time than ever to discuss the many avenues the series could take after security breach. And the choice on where Five Nights at Freddy's goes after this title is probably more important than ever. Because while everyone gets hyped up for pretty much every single FNAF release, for once a main series title has came out with a relatively mixed reputation, as there's many people who love the game and others who ended up despising it. So this next move for FNAF is really going to determine the future of the series and whether or not security breach was just a one-time mess up, or if the newly hired Steel Wheel Studios and the recently retired Scott Cawthon have resulted in a loss of game consistency, and whether FNAF years in the future is something to really look forward to. But anyway, the first thing I want to bring up, because I feel like it's easily the most hyped up thing in indie gaming history, is this Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I know most, if not all, people watching this video have heard about this movie and dreamed of its eventual revival, especially after clicking on countless clickbait videos about it. And to be honest, despite how closely we're to seeing this film a few months ago, we are still in a major gray area for it. So we first got light of this movie around 2015-ish and saw a lot of validity when Warner Bros. Were said to produce the film. However, after a couple of years in 2017, Scott Cawthon confirmed that the entire film had been scrapped, and that they were starting over after a ton of roadblocks and issues down the road. Over time, for the next few months, we got some incredibly minor teases for the film, and eventually things once again went south, where the movie got brought into other people's hands back and forth, and eventually another script did come up, leading to an actual film estimation for the very first time being around 2020. However, once again, the film got entirely scrapped and we had to wait even longer. The last script confirmation we would end up getting was in 2019, and Scott claimed that filming for the film was actually going to start spring of 2021, and for once we actually thought the movie was going to be filmed and created. But then, of course, it got scrapped again, and with Scott's retirement, we are sitting in a gray area where we really have no clue where the film is standing. The only thing that we know now is that the film is actually still supposed to be coming out eventually, and despite all these delays and issues, one day apparently it will actually release. Now, to say that this is going to be the next thing for FNAF is definitely a big stretch, but I'd say in the next 5 years or so, we actually could have this movie, or at least being close to its release, and if they decide to focus on the film even more, it could even be sooner. This is like every FNAF fan's huge grail, and all that these delays have really done is made the film even more anticipated, and assuming the film actually does end up coming out, no matter how long this ends up taking, this film is going to be freaking huge, especially if it turns out to be well written, because I mean, with so many scrapped scripts and failed ideas, it seems quite clear that the producers are not going for a slender or literally any video game film approach in the past where it just ends up being incredibly cheap and not well polished, but instead are trying to make a real film that can actually stand on its own. So I'm still really looking forward to this movie, most likely not going to be the next thing on FNAF's schedule, but should be something to look forward to in the next half decade or so, assuming the plans of producing it still stay afloat. Something a little bit more realistic that we can expect from FNAF is new books. Now, I mostly want to talk about games, so I'm only going to go over this briefly, but as the lore of this game expands more and more, books are also releasing alongside it. There's this new Tales from the Pizzaplex book series I've been seeing going around that seems to be based on security breach, and these books are supposed to be coming as early as this year. I don't really know too much about these as I don't invest too much time into the game's lore, but I know that it's one of the biggest parts of the FNAF franchise and is really what kept FNAF afloat this long anyway. So for the lore lovers, there's that to look forward to as well. Another thing that I would consider to be one of the more exciting things to talk about is the announced project by Scott himself called the Fazbear Fanverse Initiative. This little project is basically supposed to support fan game developers and help expand the side communities of FNAF. This project is something that I would consider one of Scott's greatest decisions because unlike other titles where they ignore fan games or even sometimes entirely ban them from existing, Scott here is actually entirely embracing the community, supporting productions like Five Nights at Candy's, helping these fan games grow even bigger while bringing them onto console as well. The biggest piece of this initiative that I've also seen referred to as FNAF Plus, if I'm not mistaken, is the announced remastering of the original Five Nights at Freddy's. All these new titles coming out are going to be absolutely huge for the community, especially that last one, because while they may not be considered real FNAF games, they will be licensed and supported as such, allowing for not only Steel Wheel Studios and Scott to be producing titles, but also letting fans maximize their own innovating and reinventing the future of FNAF. Now, while it's fun to automatically look at what's next for FNAF after Security Breach, the game itself is also just at the real start of its lifetime, and there's a lot of things to look forward to with it as well. The first thing being the actual patching of this title's bugs. So as many of you guys probably already know, most of the controversy in regards to this title stems from the fact that it was clearly rushed, and this led to many polishing issues along with bugs and glitches. So easily the first thing we can expect to happen is for all these issues to be ironed out, because love or hate this game, we can all hopefully agree that if it was just a fully fledged finished title, it would genuinely be a quality game, at least in terms of production value. So expectedly, all of these issues in the coming weeks are probably going to be fixed, and that's why I'd suggest waiting a little bit if you were looking in a security breach, at least until the game becomes more playable, because after these patches, most of the complaints about the game shouldn't be prevalent anymore. The next sizable feature coming for security breach itself are ports. Now, ports are not guaranteed at all. We don't really have any confirmation that security breach will be coming to any other devices, especially since it was advertised as a PlayStation game for the longest time, but ports are one of FNAF's most consistent themes. We have most of the games ported from PC to consoles like the PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, along with even mobile being included. So I think we could definitely expect security breach to come to other platforms. The only thing that really could hold this back is potential contract issues with PlayStation, because I know that sometimes these exclusive titles often get bought out by companies to only be on specific devices with the goal of incentivizing them over others for periods of time. Not sure if that's the case for FNAF, but it could be. Another potential issue is the fact that this game needs to compress itself immensely, because as of right now, it's competing with Grand Theft Auto in game size, which is absolutely ridiculous considering the difference in game complexity. And if this title ever plans on having a mobile release or a Switch release even as low as 10 gigabytes is really pushing it in game size, so there would definitely be a lot of work to do on those ends. But that isn't it for Security Breach either. In fact, the game content-wise isn't even supposed to be complete, because according to actual Steelwool Studios developers, or at least so I hear, apparently it's been confirmed that Security Breach is actually going to expand into DLC in the next year or so after all the previous mentioned issues have been fixed. So for right now, Security Breach itself is even yet to be entirely completed, and when it comes to what to expect in terms of fresh new content from the actual developers, this downloadable content really seems to be the next thing to look forward to. Now, I don't know how long this will take or even if this confirmation is accurate, but we know that Steelwool Studios is willing to delay the releases as seen in the title's official rollout, so honestly, I'm not even going to be focused on any potential release dates or anything, and I hope that they aren't either. This DLC probably isn't going to be as big of a deal as the actual release of the game, but after the main game's very questionable rollout, Steelwool Studios needs to be taking their time with this expansion pack, at least to make sure it's completed and fully finished. I'm really not sure why Steelwool Studios released such a rushed product. I've theorized on it in videos in the past, but regardless, from here on out, I hope that we can gain some more trust in the studio, because I mean, we lost Scott Cawthon from the team, and obviously he trusts Steelwool with his game, and I do think they were a good choice, but as he slowly backs away from FNAF after his official retirement, they have a massive legacy to maintain here, and this isn't the best start. We have all these cool things to be excited for, a lot of which being worked on by other companies, but the main part of FNAF will always be its video games, and none of these other side things I've mentioned are going to matter if Steelwool doesn't keep up with what FNAF has built. And yes, I'm sure keeping that legacy is hard, but that's why Scott would only put his trust in somebody who he knew could produce a damn good game, like in the example of FNAF Help Wanted. So now that they're working on main titles of the franchise, I just really am scared that while FNAF is far from over, its peak may be. But hopefully this rambling I'm doing is for no reason, and we won't have to worry about the game in the future. But to hear a bit more about Steelwool's issues in regards to FNAF, check this video out, let me know what you guys are looking forward to, and peace.